You've felt it, haven't you? Not just once, not just randomly, but enough times that it starts to raise a deeper question, something you can't quite explain. Why does this keep happening, especially when you're trying to stay disciplined? Why now, when you're more focused, more aware, more in control than before? And the strangest part, no one really talks about it. People either laugh it off or bury it in silence. But you sense there's something more behind it, something that doesn't fit the usual explanation, because your life has never been usual. You've always felt that difference, the way you think, the way you feel, the way you experience things on a deeper level than most people around you. You're not just reacting to life, you're observing it, questioning it, trying to understand what's happening beneath the surface. So when something like this happens, you don't just ignore it. You ask yourself, what does this mean? And maybe, just maybe, this isn't something to be ashamed of. What if what you've been experiencing is not a sign of weakness, but a sign that something is happening within you, something shifting, something releasing, something transforming? Because people like you, those who are more aware, more introspective, more spiritually sensitive, don't go through things the same way as everyone else. Your mind processes differently, your energy moves differently, even your subconscious speaks louder, and sometimes it speaks when you're asleep. This is where most people misunderstand it. They reduce it to something purely physical, something random, something meaningless. But you already feel that it's not that simple. There's a reason it shows up at specific moments, a reason it happens during certain phases of your life, and a reason it affects you differently. So instead of pushing it away, instead of attaching guilt or confusion to it, what if you looked at it from another angle? Not as a problem, but as a message. In this video, we're going to break down 5 deeper reasons why this happens, especially to those who are more aware, more disciplined, and more spiritually in tune. Not from a place of judgment, but from a place of understanding. Because once you understand it, you stop fearing it. And once you stop fearing it, you start seeing what it's really trying to show you. So the real question is, are you ready to understand what your mind, and maybe even something deeper, is trying to tell you? Reason 1 isn't what most people think. What you're experiencing is not random, not meaningless, and definitely not just physical. It's energy. Not the kind people casually talk about, but a deeper internal force that builds over time, especially in individuals who are more disciplined, more aware, and more restrained in their daily lives. Think about it. You've been holding yourself back, controlling your impulses, avoiding distractions, choosing discipline over indulgence, while others release their urges constantly through habits, entertainment, or lack of control. You've been doing the opposite. You've been containing it, managing it, redirecting it, and that creates something most people never truly experience. Pressure, not negative pressure, but accumulation. Because energy, whether physical, emotional, or even spiritual, doesn't just disappear. It has to go somewhere. It has to move. It has to express itself. And when you don't give it an outlet during your waking life, your subconscious finds a way. That's where the confusion begins. Consciously, you're in control, focused, aligned with your values. But beneath the surface, there's still movement, still energy circulating, building, waiting. And at night, when your guard is down, when your mind is no longer filtering every thought, that energy finally expresses itself. Not because you're weak, but because you're human, and because you've been holding more than most people. This is something rarely acknowledged. People will tell you to just control yourself, without understanding that excessive suppression, without balance, doesn't eliminate desire. It intensifies internal buildup. You're not just dealing with desire, you're dealing with stored energy, energy that hasn't been expressed physically, released emotionally, or grounded mentally. So your system, in its own way, finds a release point, not during the day when you're alert and controlled, but at night when the subconscious takes over. And that release isn't a failure, it's a mechanism, a reset, a form of internal balancing. Your body and mind are trying to regulate something that has been building for days, sometimes weeks. And for people like you, it can feel even more intense because you don't just suppress actions, you suppress thoughts, reactions, and emotions, carrying things internally instead of expressing them outwardly. That makes the buildup deeper, more layered, more complex, which is why the release can feel stronger, more vivid, more real. It's not just physical, it's psychological and energetic at the same time. This doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something wrong, but it may mean something is out of balance. Because true discipline is not just about suppression, it's about channeling, redirecting energy into something constructive, grounding it through action, movement, creativity, or purpose. If there is no outlet, the system creates one, and that's exactly what you're experiencing. So instead of seeing it as something to be ashamed of, see it as a signal, a message that something within you is building and needs direction. Because energy that is not guided will always find its own way out. The real question isn't why it happens, it's what you're doing with that energy when you're awake. Reason 2 goes deeper, into a place most people rarely explore, the subconscious. What you're experiencing may actually be a form of inner purification, not punishment, not failure, but a quiet process of release happening beneath your awareness. Because no matter how disciplined you are today, your mind carries traces of everything you've seen, heard, and felt in the past. Images, conversations, environments, habits, all of it leaves an imprint. And even if you've changed, even if you're trying to live with more control and clarity, those impressions don't just disappear overnight. They settle in the subconscious. During the day, your conscious mind is active. It filters, controls, rejects. You choose what to focus on, what to avoid, what to suppress. You're intentional, but at night, that filter weakens. The subconscious takes the lead, and what has been stored, sometimes for years, begins to surface. Not always in a logical way, not always in a way that reflects who you are now, but in a way that reflects what is still inside you. That's why these experiences can feel confusing, because they don't always match your current mindset. You might be focused, disciplined, committed to a higher standard, yet your dreams tell a different story. And that contrast can create guilt or even doubt. But here's what most people misunderstand. What surfaces is not necessarily who you are, it's what you're releasing. Think of it like this. When you start cleaning a space that hasn't been touched in a long time, the first thing that happens isn't clarity, it's disturbance. Dust rises. Hidden things come into view. It looks messier before it becomes clean. The same thing happens within the mind. When you begin to change, to become more aware, more disciplined, more intentional, your system starts to process what has been buried. And that processing often happens at night. Your mind replays, reorganizes, and releases stored material. Old patterns, past exposures, suppressed desires, things you may not even consciously think about anymore. It's not a step backward. It's a sign that something is being cleared out, that your internal world is adjusting to the direction you're choosing consciously. For people who are less aware, this process goes unnoticed. They don't question it. They don't observe it. But you do. Because you're paying attention. You're not just living. You're analyzing, reflecting, trying to understand the deeper meaning behind your experiences. And that awareness can make it feel heavier, but also more meaningful. So instead of interpreting it as a contradiction, your actions versus your dreams, see it as a transition. Your conscious self is moving in one direction, and your subconscious is catching up, releasing what no longer aligns with who you're becoming. It's not immediate. It's not always comfortable, but it's necessary. Because you can't fully move forward while carrying everything from the past. Some things have to surface before they can leave. Some layers have to be exposed before they can be cleared. And sometimes that clearing doesn't happen when you're awake. It happens when you're not in control. That's why this experience can feel so vivid, so real, so unexpected. It's not filtered. It's raw. It's the subconscious speaking in its own language. So instead of attaching guilt to it, observe it. Instead of questioning your identity because of it, understand the process behind it. Because this isn't about who you are today, it's about what your mind is letting go of. And once it's released, it loses its hold over you. Reason 3 is something you've probably felt your entire life, even before you had the words to describe it. You experience things differently, not just emotionally, but mentally and even energetically. Where others brush things off, you absorb them. Where others forget quickly, you carry impressions longer. And where others sleep without much depth, your mind stays active, processing, exploring, going further than the surface. This is what heightened sensitivity looks like. And it's not weakness, it's intensity. People like you don't just see the world, you feel it. Conversations linger in your mind. Images stay with you. Moments replay themselves, not because you want them to, but because your mind naturally goes deeper. You analyze, you reflect, you connect dots others don't even notice. And while this can be a strength during the day, giving you insight, awareness, even intuition, it doesn't just turn off when you fall asleep. It continues. In fact, it often becomes stronger, because at night there are no distractions, no filters, no conscious control trying to organize everything. Your mind is free to process everything it has absorbed, every emotion, every impression, every layer of experience that didn't fully settle during the day. And because your inner world is already more active than most, your dreams don't come lightly. They come vividly, more detailed, more intense, more immersive. You don't just dream, you experience your dreams. And that's why certain experiences feel more real, more powerful, more memorable for you than they might for someone else. It's not necessarily that they happen more often, it's that when they do, your mind amplifies them. Your sensitivity turns a simple subconscious release into something layered, something emotionally charged, something that feels almost symbolic. This is where misunderstanding often happens. You compare your experience to others who don't seem affected, who don't talk about it, who move on without a second thought. And you wonder if something is wrong, if you're somehow different in a negative way. But the truth is, you are different, but not in the way you think. Your system is simply more responsive, more aware, more receptive, more engaged with what's happening internally. And that means your subconscious doesn't just process things quietly in the background. It brings them forward, into vivid scenarios that feel almost alive. It's not just about release, it's about processing on a deeper level. Your mind is not satisfied with surface-level clearing. It goes further, exploring the emotional and psychological layers attached to what's being released. That's why your experiences may feel more intense, more personal, even more confusing at times. Because they're not just mechanical, they're meaningful in the way they're processed. But here's the key point. Intensity does not mean loss of control. It simply means depth of experience. And once you understand that, everything starts to shift. Instead of reacting with confusion or discomfort, you begin to observe the pattern. You begin to recognize that your mind is doing what it has always done, going deeper than most, processing more than most, feeling more than most. And that doesn't stop when you sleep. It evolves. So what you're experiencing isn't just about the event itself. It's about the way your mind interacts with it, the way your sensitivity amplifies it, shapes it, and brings it into focus with a level of clarity and intensity that others may never fully understand. Which means the real difference isn't in what happens, it's in how deeply you experience it. Reason 4 brings a different perspective, one that most people avoid because it challenges how you see yourself. What if this isn't just something happening to you, but something revealing something about you? Not the act itself, but your response to it. Because at the end of the day, it's not always the event that defines you. It's how you interpret it, how you react to it, and what it does to your state of mind afterward. This is where it becomes a form of test, not a punishment, not a failure, but a quiet check on your discipline, your awareness, your stability. Think about it. Two people can experience the same thing, yet walk away completely differently. One falls into guilt, overthinking, self-judgment. The other pauses, reflects, and moves forward without losing balance. The difference is not in what happened, it's in how they handled it. And that difference reveals something deeper. It reveals your level of control, not over the unconscious moment itself, but over your conscious reaction afterward. Because true discipline is not just about what you do when you're in control, it's about how you respond when you weren't. Do you panic? Do you shame yourself? Do you start questioning your progress, your identity, your worth? Or do you stay grounded? Do you observe it for what it is, without attaching unnecessary weight to it? This is where growth actually happens, not in avoiding every situation, but in mastering your response to them. And sometimes, experiences like this expose hidden layers of the ego, the part of you that wants to feel perfect, the part that wants complete control over everything, the part that struggles to accept that you're still human, still evolving, still in process. Because when something happens outside your conscious control, it humbles you. It reminds you that discipline is not absolute, that awareness is still developing, that growth is still unfolding, and that humility is powerful. Because it keeps you grounded. It prevents you from building a false image of perfection that can easily break under pressure. It teaches you to stay balanced, even when things don't go exactly as planned. So instead of seeing this as something that disrupts your progress, see it as something that refines it. It shows you where you truly stand, not in theory, but in reality. Are you stable or easily shaken? Are you aware or reactive? Are you disciplined or dependent on control? These are deeper questions, and sometimes they only surface through moments you didn't expect. That's why this isn't about the moment itself. It's about what it reveals afterward. Your ability to stay calm, your ability to stay clear, your ability to stay aligned without falling into extremes. Because real discipline is not rigid, it's steady. It doesn't collapse when something unexpected happens. It adjusts and continues forward. So when you look at it this way, it stops being something confusing and starts becoming something useful. A checkpoint, a moment that asks you, not, why did this happen, but how are you handling it? And your answer to that question says more about your growth than the experience itself. Reason 5 points to something many people overlook: timing. Not just what is happening, but when it happens. Because these experiences don't show up randomly. They often appear during periods of change, when something in your life is shifting, evolving, or breaking away from what it used to be. This is what a transition phase feels like. You're no longer who you were, but you're not fully who you're becoming yet. And in that space in between, things can feel unstable. Old habits are fading. Old patterns are losing their grip. But traces of them still exist within you, not fully gone, just no longer dominant. And that creates friction. Because part of you is moving forward, becoming more disciplined, more aware, more intentional, while another part is still releasing what it carried for so long. That release doesn't always happen cleanly or consciously. Sometimes it happens indirectly, through your dreams, through your subconscious, through moments you didn't plan. It's not regression, it's transition. Think about any major change in life. Before things settle into a new state, there's always a period of adjustment, a phase where things feel inconsistent, unpredictable, even contradictory. You might feel stronger during the day, more focused than ever, and then experience something at night that seems completely out of sync with that progress. But it's not out of sync, it's part of the process. Because as you grow, your system has to reorganize itself, mentally, emotionally, even physically. What used to be normal is no longer aligned with where you're going, so it begins to break down, to dissolve, to leave your system, and that process isn't always smooth. Old patterns don't disappear instantly. They fade, they weaken, and sometimes in their final stages, they surface one last time, not to pull you back, but to pass through you. That's why this can happen during moments when you're actually doing better than before. When you're more disciplined, more focused, more in control. It feels contradictory, but in reality, it's often a sign that something is being cleared out as you move forward. You're not going backward, you're letting go. And letting go isn't always quiet. Sometimes it's noticeable. Sometimes it feels intense. Sometimes it shows up in ways that make you question your progress. But if you look closely, you'll see a pattern. These moments often come during phases where you're changing something in your life, upgrading your habits, or stepping into a new level of awareness. That's not coincidence, that's adjustment. Your internal system is catching up with your external decisions. Your subconscious is aligning with your conscious direction. And in that alignment process, there can be temporary imbalances. Temporary is the key word, because this phase doesn't last forever. Once the old patterns are fully released, once your system stabilizes in its new state, things become clearer, more consistent, more aligned. But until then, there can be moments that feel confusing, moments that don't seem to match the direction you're moving in. And that's where understanding becomes important. Because if you misinterpret the phase, you might think you're failing, when in reality, you're transitioning. You might think you're losing control, when in reality, you're shedding what no longer belongs to you. So instead of resisting it, observe it. Recognize the timing. Recognize the shift. Recognize that something is changing within you. Because growth is not always clean. It's layered, it's gradual, and sometimes it passes through the subconscious before it fully settles into your conscious life. So what you're experiencing may not be a setback at all. It may be a sign that you're in the middle of becoming someone different. And in that process, some things have to leave before the new version of you can fully arrive. In the end, what you've been looking at isn't something random, and it's not something you should carry with guilt or confusion. When you connect all 5 reasons together, a different picture starts to form. Not a picture of weakness, but a picture of process, of movement, of internal adjustment that most people never take the time to understand. Because when something happens in your life that you don't fully control, the easiest reaction is to judge it, to label it, to reduce it to something simple. But what you've seen here is that the human experience, especially for those who are more aware, more disciplined, more introspective, is rarely that simple. Sometimes it's energy finding balance. Sometimes it's the subconscious releasing what was stored. Sometimes it's sensitivity processing life more deeply than others. Sometimes it's a test of how you respond, not just what happens. And sometimes it's simply a transition into a new version of yourself. None of these are meant to define you in a negative way. They're meant to help you understand that what you experience internally is often part of a larger process of alignment. Your mind, your body, your subconscious, they are not separate systems working against you. They are connected, and when one part shifts, the others respond. That's why awareness matters, because without awareness, you interpret everything as random. But with awareness, you start to see patterns. You start to recognize timing. You start to understand that even uncomfortable or confusing moments can carry meaning if you observe them without panic or judgment. And maybe the most important thing to remember is this: you are not defined by what happens to you in a moment you don't consciously control. You are defined by your clarity afterward, your ability to stay grounded, your ability to continue growing without turning every experience into self-judgment. So instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" a better question might be, "What is this showing me about my internal state right now?" Because that shift in perspective changes everything. It removes shame, it removes unnecessary fear, and it brings understanding where confusion used to be. You're not broken for experiencing things deeply. You're not behind because your mind processes differently, and you're not alone in going through internal phases that require adjustment. You're simply aware enough to notice what many people ignore, and that awareness, even when it feels uncomfortable, is part of your development. So take this as a reminder: stay observant, not judgmental. Stay aware, not reactive. And most importantly, stay grounded in your own growth, instead of comparing your internal world to the surface-level experience of others. If this made sense to you, then you already know you're not the only one experiencing things like this. Now I want to ask you something real. Have you noticed these patterns in your own life, without ever really understanding them until now? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might help someone else understand theirs. And if you want more deep, honest perspectives like this, make sure to stay connected.